Good morning and welcome to another episode of PSYWAR. I am Staff Sergeant Larry Barnhill, and today I have with me MAJ Fabia Gomez-Salas, who is currently the 8th Psychological Operation Group's newest psychologist. MAJ Gomez-Salas holds a doctorate in clinical psychology. Ma'am, could you tell us a little bit about your military career thus far?
Okay. Starting with born and raised in Puerto Rico, so you might notice an accent. Over in my third year in my degree, a recruiter came and gave us a speech on HPSP scholarship, and that I, could apply for. And so that's how I got into it. I got approved for that scholarship. That was around 2009. And then I commissioned in 2011 because by then I had completed my doctorate's degree. So commissioned in 2011, got sent to Bolig in San Antonio for 2.5 months. And then my first duty station was Hawaii. I was there for my residency. And then I got spun up on everything military since I didn't have any military experience whatsoever before that. After that, I went to Fort Hood. I spent there 5 years. And out of those 5 years, I did 3 assignments, 2 deployments. And then that was 2018 when I completed that and came straight to Fort Bragg. I was in 95th Civil Affairs. And then just recently PCS, interpost transferred to 8th POG.
This month, the Army observes suicide prevention. Let's discuss burnout. Are there different types of burnout?
Okay, so burnout, it's kind of starting with a definition. It's a physical, mental, and emotional kind of drain brought up by stress, right? On the physical piece, you're going to notice probably fatigue. You might get sick more often just because your immunity is a little low on that. On the emotional side, you might feel like sad, depressed, anxious, and whatnot. And then on the mental piece, you might be more drained, more tired, and all of that. Just a combination of all those things, right? The different types of burnout are going to be more with overload burnout, right? You have way too many demands, too little time, or you don't know how to time manage. You can be under challenge burnout where you don't feel appreciated, you don't feel like that you're being praised often, so you feel discouraged, you feel like you're not part of the team, that you don't have a purpose, right? And so you're kind of doing that job with no purpose in mind, so therefore you don't feel motivated. And then you have the neglect, right? You feel helpless, you feel like there's no way out, you feel like you're doing this for what, so again, kind of following into that, not feeling appreciated and not feeling that somebody's watching you and kind of supporting you on that side, right? So all in all, like, we can have a little bit of each other, or we can kind of fit the criteria for just one. But burnout in a sense is just like either too much, too little, or you just don't feel motivated enough.
Wow. Who can be affected by burnout? Is there a group that is more affected than others in the military?
Well, burnout can come in different challenges, right? But everybody can be subject to burnout, right? Who can be, young people can be exposed to burnout just because they don't have those internal resources. They don't know what to do or how to identify it. They just keep going and keep going and keep going. And then the older population, right? They've created habits, and they not that they thrive on the burnout, but they just neglect themselves and think that's part of their work, that's part of their job, that's part of their reputation, right? Being in the office all day, at all times, go, 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 right? So I feel like everybody has, can be subject to burnout. It's just identifying it and knowing what to do, what resources I have, and what to do and where to go from there.
With that being said, what are the normal contributing factors to burnout?
Yeah, so contributing factors, right? And I didn't speak that on the other question, right? But other populations, right? Dual military people, specifically talking about military folks, people, in the pandemic, right? Single parents, right? Not knowing where your resources are at, not having support and all that. So contributing factors kind of bleeding into that are going to be high demands, right? Not everybody during the pandemic, to take it as an example, were supportive of people working from home and all that. So a lot of folks had to see where their caregivers were, how to take care of their kids, how to manage and do all these things, right? Because the high demands on every spectrum are going to be high, and then you don't have those internal resources to see, hey, How can I manage with all this? Perception of another contributor factor, perception of not being appreciated, right? Kind of go, 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 having all these to-do lists, doing them, but no praise, no nothing. So you don't feel appreciated and you don't know what the actual intent is. Lack of time management, right? That's a big thing, where if you don't have that habit of priority lists, to-do lists, organization strategies, using your Outlook calendar, for example. All these things can contribute to burnout because you're kind of, draining yourself, not knowing what to do, either, postergating things and not doing them in a timely manner. Then your boss comes in, asks you about that. Then you're like all, flustered, anxious and all that. And then piling everything up. So it's kind of that big snowball. Lack of social support too, right? Say that you're overworked and then, the household, that lack of balance between home and work, that can also contribute to that. And then, if you don't want to go home because, you have a lot of work and then at home you're going to have those demands too from either spouse, kids, if you have any, all those chores, bills and all that stuff, right? So it's kind of like a revolving effect. Inability to make decisions and have control, right? Kind of that feeling out of control and not feeling like you can say no, right? And especially in the military, right? If your NCO tells you to do something, you cannot say no, right? But you can also go to your battle buddies and say, hey, can you help me on this because I don't know how to. Unrealistic expectations, right? Kind of not knowing what the demands of the job are, right? And kind of not being equipped, prepared, like not researching about that job and just taking it as it is, and then realizing soon enough that, I don't know how to do this, right? And then if you don't reach out to those battle buddies or people that know to guide you and mentor you, then you're, prone to kind of hit a wall and not meet those demands. And then no rewards, therefore no appreciation, and then having no motivation. So that's kind of escalating in that kind of that flow chart kind of mentality.
For our senior population, what are the symptoms or feelings we should be aware of for ourselves?
Yeah, for the senior population, right, I'm thinking, those senior NCOs, right, people that have been a great amount of time in the Army, right, or, office. The big thing with a lot of people that haven't maybe greater than 10 years, they have that mentality that sometimes reaching for help can be misconstrued, right? A lot of people have the mentality that reaching out for help is a sign of weakness, and therefore they do not reach out for help. Throughout the pandemic, half of Americans have neglected in a way their health, right? So they're not making appointments to check on themselves and whatnot, right? And that's a big general population, not only military, right? And so if you're neglecting your health and not checking your cholesterol or your blood work and all these things, you're kind of like just neglecting your health in a nutshell, right? You're avoiding that piece. So same with, our senior population, right? You've created these habits, overworking, staying up till late. Then you have soldiers underneath you and you want to give the perception that you're still on it, still reliable, available 24/7. You want to know all the things, right? And nothing wrong with that, but it's when you notice that you're burning fuse, right? That something is like, home life is not that great. You're not sleeping well. You're like, your relationships you're bumping heads with your soldier subordinates and things like that, right? So kind of having that in the back of your head that this is kind of not healthy, not normal. So those unhealthy patterns that you carry over your military career might not be the greatest. And it's kind of your time to take a pause and, rearrange those priorities in a way.
And for our junior soldiers, what should they look for when working with their peers and on their off time?
Yeah, not a big difference, right? From senior population and younger population. Younger population, they might not know how to decompress, right? They think going and playing video games or being more passive in that sense, or not knowing where their resources are at, going back to that again, right? Not knowing how to regulate themselves, taking everything like in an impulse whim, or not understanding where your sergeant is coming from and all these things, right? Those unhealthy patterns that perhaps go back to their upbringing and all that. So young population, what to do, right? If you're noticing that you're snapping too often, that work is getting a little bit too stressful, kind of taking a step back again, right? And realizing that perhaps you have people to your left and right that can support you, help you out. If there's like a duo that you don't know how to do that, or you don't know how to start, seeking out that help, seeking guidance, mentorship, right? That's what we strive on in this culture too. But going back to that question, young population, whether you're new to the Army, you're young in rank, be aware of what's happening within you, right? Making sure that you're being aware of your surroundings, aware of yourself, so that way you can take action.
What are some tips to combat burnout as an individual and as leaders?
So a few tips, right? And I think I've added them throughout. I think first things first, if you're noticing that you're snapping more often than not, that your sleep is not great, quality sleep is not good, and sometimes you feel like alcohol is helping you, which it really doesn't help you. But if you feel that way, your relationship at home is not that great just because you're bringing all those stressors to your household. Perhaps you enjoyed going fishing and you're not doing that anymore. Those are kind of hints that things are not going well, right? That you need to kind of focus on yourself. So with that, kind of taking a step back, knowing what's going on. Is it something like what came first, the egg or the chicken, right? If you're noticing your sleep patterns is not great, is it because it's a medical condition that is kind of aiding to going to work and not being able to properly perform? Or is this because work, right? Work is getting a little bit out of hand. The work demands, it's a new job, for example, and you're kind of still adjusting and taking it too hard. So tips, take a step back, acknowledge that there's something off, right? What is going off, right? Are you getting sicker too often? You're getting a cold, and I know with COVID lately, like everything is COVID related. However, if you feel like you're under the weather way too often, headaches, GI is like acting up on you, right? Okay, taking a step back, is this coming from work and all that stress? Or should I go and visit my PCM and get that sorted out, right? But, do a self-scan, see where this is coming from, which is in turn is going to help with that self-awareness, going to kind of hint you and like, okay, I need to get better. Oftentimes we neglect each other, we neglect ourselves, and we avoid to acknowledge that sometimes there's bigger things that we need to focus on as opposed to just snowballing and hiding that snowball, because right now I need to focus on work, right? So taking a step back, acknowledging there's something wrong, and then take action. Knowing your resources, not only your resources here in USASOC, but your social resources. Could it be church? Could it be your pastor, sports? If you're like enjoy being a soccer coach, and things like that, right? Knowing those resources so that way you don't get stuck and then make it all worse, because burnout, it's kind of the startup, and that can lead to anxiety, could lead to depression, suicidal thoughts and things like that, because you don't see a way out. So if you can take a hold of yourself and start noticing, all these things, then perhaps you can have like a great plan. And with that, good tips, right? Oftentimes I know a lot of people talk about like deep breathing and they're like, oh, but that doesn't work, right? But if you're mindful and you're present while you're deep breathe, and you can take a step back and do it, that's going to help you, right? Because then the adrenaline is not going to take over, and perhaps you're not going to snap at somebody, right? So taking that moment, like inhaling for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, letting it go for 4 seconds, and just hold it in for 4 seconds. So 4, 4, 4, 4, right? Kind of, they call it the box breathing. That could be a good thing, right? At least for me, personal experience, like I flush when I get upset or overworked or overwhelmed, and I go and put cold water in my hands, right? I go to the sink, and that helps me regulate, and that helps me kind of bring my temperature down, right? So that's kind of my go-to when things like that happen. So hopefully that helps somebody too.
If someone were to come speak to you, would their career be negatively affected?
Short answer, no. However, there's going to be some exceptions. If your functionality, your performance and safety are at a risk, or we're concerned about that, then we're going to take action, right? We're going to make sure you're safe, that you're taken care of and supported. But that doesn't mean you're going to be kicked out of the Army. A lot of times I hear people saying, oh, if I go to behavioral health, they're going to chapter me, or they're going to med board me, they're going to kick me out, right? And I want to say flat out, that's not a thing. That's not a real thing, right? That's usually discouraged people from seeking help, and that's why they wait until it kind of is too late, or where they're hitting a wall. And I just want to let everybody know that, that's a preventative action. If you feel like, you even have a question, you can definitely come to the wellness center and kind of swing by and ask for that, right? So we can guide you to the right resources, because we have a bunch of resources in Fort Bragg, and use a SOC and an 8th POC too.
What are some techniques that can be used to avoid becoming burned out?
Yeah, so kind of like I mentioned before, taking a step back, making sure that you have a good support system, like you can phone a friend when things get hard, and kind of having that azimuth check, right? Getting that perspective checked. Sometimes it helps having those friends that can call you out and kind of tell you, hey, you're not who you used to be. Why don't you do X, Y, and Z? It could be talking to the chaplain. It could be going to your MFLAG work, or it could be talking to myself, the social worker here in 8th POG, sorry. So all these resources are available within 8th POG. So, kind of noticing that, utilizing that, so that way we can steer you in the right direction, see where that burnout is coming from, helping you develop great habits and great coping skills, so that way you can thrive and move on, and know your know how to identify those stressors.
Where are you located, and what are your business hours?
Yes, so we are located in the Wellness Center. The Wellness Center houses surgeon, the PA, the social worker, Captain Michelle Worsley, myself, Major Gomez-Salas, and we still house here like the MFLAG worker, SHARP, EO. So we have all the resources that you might need. So say that you're more into the spiritual thing, and you want to perhaps see the chaplain first, by all means, just swing on by the Wellness Center, and we can definitely talk about that and hook you up with the right resource that fits your needs. Oh, and business hours, sorry. We open at 9 until 1600, right? After hours, or in case of an emergency, ER will be your best bet if that cannot wait until the next day.
Again, thank you, ma'am, for being with us again today on PSYWAR. This concludes our episode. MAJ Fabia Gomez-Salas, 8th Group Psychologist. Remember, we are a family and are here to help. 8th Psychological Operations Group offers a variety of services at their wellness center located on 9th Infantry Street.